Hi, and welcome to GCTV. I'm Sampetsi Sakrath. Our guest in studio today is author Chauncey Roberts. Welcome, Chauncey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. We're going to go ahead and start off with the questions, get to know you a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Scared of Scorpions? My Year of Hell in the Holy Land.
Right. This book is something I've spent about 2.5 years on, but wrote it in a white heat. So very quickly, I wrote the first draft of the book, and it covers my time as over 1 year, or even more than that, maybe 16 or 18 months, as a creative artist working on 3 projects in Palestine. The first one was based on I made 3 music videos in Las Vegas, and one is called Palestine, My Heart. And that had played on the radio in Tunisia. And so the first creative project was the Palestine My Heart concert in Bethlehem.
Okay, and how long did you stay there?
I was there for 1 year exactly. In Palestine, I overstayed my visa by 9 months.
Wow.
I wasn't really a welcome guest by Israel at the end. They in fact told me I can't come back, but I hope to go back in the future.
So that does not make you a Palestinian?
No, I'm not Palestinian at all. I'm part German and Welsh and Irish, and originally from West Virginia. But I took an interest in the Palestinian cause when I was interested in human rights and self-determination of other peoples.
And how did your friends and family react to the fact that you were there living for a year?
I myself was concerned in the beginning about a friend who had gone there as a teacher that I had worked with in Tunisia. And I'm sure that my family didn't want me to go there, and I really had no intention of ever myself going to Palestine. But once I was there, I enjoyed the great kindness and warmth of the people, and they really appreciate people coming to help them. Absolutely. And by the way, the concert I mentioned was canceled. 5 days before the concert, the Gaza flotilla tragedy happened when Israel military killed 9 people on the boats coming from Turkey to Gaza.
Were you afraid to live in Ramallah for?
I lived all around. Ramallah was a city I spent time in and ended up there, but I also lived in Bethlehem and Hebron. And it's interesting to be in such biblically historical places where Abraham and Sarah from the Bible, Rebecca and Ismail are buried in
Wow,
that's
very
Hebron.
Interesting. A lot of history there. What was the point of the scared of scorpions?
Why was I scared?
Yeah.
I was scared because of scorpions. You know, scorpions are roaming free there in the countryside and land. They can be also in the trees and fall onto people. But I always like to sit outside, frankly, and drink beer maybe once a week or a couple times a month, and write letters to my friends, even in icy cold, snowy weather in West Virginia if I would be visiting family. And so I continued that practice, but it would be odd to do that where the people were very conservative Christians, the Palestinians, in the West Bank I lived, and also the Muslim people. But I was told that a lot of Muslims were purchasing alcohol at the stores in Bethlehem, even more than the Christians, and most of the customers would be Muslim. Even.
Wow. Okay, and why should people care about this issue? After all, you mentioned your own burnout about the Palestine in the news and before you even went there.
You know, I just think it's so important that people care about the self-determination of other people, and liberty and justice for all are points that mean so much to me in my own life. And as a Christian, I believe that I should treat others as my brothers and sisters, and care about them, even if I don't share the same faith that they do.
That's great. And what are you working on now?
I'm recording more songs, and recently I made historical videos, not music videos, but just regular historical political videos in Germany. And that is a series called building a case for a war crimes tribunal against Bush, his cronies, and Blair. And I know that's a little bit exciting for a lot of people, but they're just short films and relating some of the behavior and activity from hundreds of years ago, even back to the 1400s in a town in Germany, to the Iraq War, which I very much oppose.
Yes, yes. What do you make of the development
Developments there now in the past week? Well, this is, for anybody who's familiar with Ukraine, this is really an exciting time, an unbelievable time, that Yulia Tymoshenko has been released from prison, and that the president, the so-called president now, Yanukovych, is really on the run, and they're looking to arrest him. And I just read yesterday that he was in Sevastopol, seen in southern Ukraine, in Crimea. And you know, when I taught in Ukraine, the people, I'd ask them about what they thought about the Palestinian cause, and almost always they said they really didn't care about, because it was so far from them, and they had their own problems. The same issues, basically, of self-determination and people's right to choose their government.
You taught in Tunisia before the Arab Spring.
Right, I had a song on the radio then. Palestine, My Heart was a song that played on the radio and could be heard by hundreds of thousands on a main station. Before the Arab Spring, and a friend of the King of Jordan told me he heard my song on the radio in Tunisia, so that made me happy, and my friends heard me speaking in a radio interview, but I was very busy at the time as well.
That's quite flattering to have them hear your song.
But I never got any money. I never got any money from this stuff, so I hope that I will get some return on my investments, but buy the book, you know, what the heck.
What is the Saga of Lusty Louise?
Oh, goodness. The Saga of Lusty Louise is a podcast series I was asked to write when I was in Kyiv. And someone, this company said, would you please write something that involves British slang? So it is risque, and Louise is a bad girl, but she does marry in the end. And it's cute because it's for adults who are learning English, and it doesn't broaden the horizons, and it's really, really funny.
So what are your impressions about being in the United States since you've been living out the country for so many years?
Well, it's really like culture shock to be back in the United States. There are differences, I think, among the people. I think that, as for example, I'm an avid walker, and to see all the signs, no trespassing, as I go down the road, and that there's a sense of fear because of crime everywhere, I suppose, in so many parts of the United States. So this is a great impression when you felt like you were living in greater freedom in other countries.
Absolutely. You were in Syria before the recent tragedy began there. You ended up writing songs for the wife of the Damascus police chief? Right,
the Damascus police chief was helping me because my video camera had been stolen. And my book begins with the theft of my video camera. And it was odd to be in a situation where somebody who was so important in Damascus and would know, therefore, President Assad, who has there are serious questions about him regarding human rights, and certainly a lot of things that have happened recently. The United Nations is saying that he's responsible for firing on his own people.
Wow.
But, you know, a revolution seemed to follow me where I've gone in Tunisia and Syria. I'm really sorry for what's happened with the Syrian people. It's just a tragedy, and Ukraine.
Speaking of Syria, would you go back to Syria?
I definitely want to go back in the future, and I hope that the problems will be resolved and worked out, that those teams will negotiate and that come to some sort of peace, so that area, the people who are very fine people, can live peacefully and away from this horrible tragedy which has engulfed their country. So
what does it mean to you to be an American citizen? In your travels around the world, do they treat you the same in, let's say, the Middle East than in Germany or Switzerland? Well, so there are certain countries that are going to treat you even more wonderfully because of their pro-American stance, you might say. And Poland is an example of that.
And so there are going to be other countries where people speak behind you, behind your back, and say bad things about you, perhaps. I think when I have been dealing with an educated population by teaching business English around the world, so these people have a commonality that they are always very welcoming. But I can say that people in the Arab world and the Middle East are very, very generous and kind and giving. And while most countries that I go to, and I've really been in quite a lot of countries, have a feeling that we're the greatest country in the world, right. But we really should be, especially in today's age, realize that we're united.
All right, that's great. Well, you're single. How do people in the Arab countries respond to someone not being married?
You know, it's the strangest thing that people, before they even knew my name, they would say, "Are you married?" Some people, and that's an odd way. I mean, to be married is such an important thing there, and yet I know that in Europe and the United States, there can be between 40–45% right. divorce rate. So I never really placed that high stakes on it. As after I got into my mid-30s, you know, the very idea of men being virgins who are 22 and 28, my young friends in Ramallah, for example, and Hebron, for me that was really strange that they had experienced life like that.
Right, wow. Okay, last question. You travel usually alone and on your own. Does it get lonely?
Well, I say that I'm never really alone when I've got God, and I'm totally prayerful in my life, in my travels, and also I've gotten the opportunity to share my faith, and like in Ukraine, people would ask about my faith, students would. I've certainly lived in a lot of countries where people had been atheistic and lived in atheistic systems for many years. And so I'm glad that they do ask, because maybe it's unprofessional to speak of my religion in the workplace. But finally...
Well, I feel you. I'm always with God as well. Well, thank you so much for coming. I look forward to reading your book.
Please do. And thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching GCTV. We will see you next time.